New York City, the Big Apple, 8 million people, 5 boroughs, the city that never sleeps, a place of dreams, opportunity, success, but also a place of crime, violence, death. Behind the glittering skyline and bustling streets, some of the most shocking murders in American history have taken place. Cases that made headlines around the world, that changed laws, that haunt the city to this day. 5 verified cases where New York City became a crime scene, where lives were stolen in America's biggest city. This is what happens when the city that never sleeps becomes the city that kills. Before we explore these shocking cases, if you're interested in true crime, subscribe and hit the notification bell. We cover verified cases from around the world with respect for victims. Comment which NYC case affected you most. Let's begin. Son of Sam, David Berkowitz. Summer of 1976. New York City was gripped by terror. A serial killer was hunting young women, shooting them as they sat in parked cars, with their boyfriends, with friends, alone, late at night in quiet neighborhoods. The killer used a .44 caliber handgun. He struck without warning, shot through car windows, then disappeared into the night. The attack started on July 29, 1976. Donna Lauria, 18 years old, was sitting in a car with her friend Jody Valenti in the Bronx. They had just returned from a disco. It was 1 a.m. They were talking, saying goodnight. Suddenly, a man approached the car. He pulled out a gun. He fired 5 shots through the passenger window. Donna was hit twice. She died instantly. Jody was hit in the thigh. She survived. The killer ran. Police had no leads, no witnesses who could identify him. Just a description. A man, average height, dark hair. It could have been anyone in New York City. Then he struck again. October 23, 1976. Carl Denaro and Rosemary Keenan were sitting in a parked car in Queens, late at night, talking. A man walked up, fired into the car. Carl was shot in the head. He survived but lost part of his skull. Rosemary was unharmed. Again, the killer escaped. November 27, 1976. Joanne Lamino and Donna DeMasi were sitting on a porch in Queens. 2 teenage girls, just talking. A man approached. He asked for directions. Then he pulled out a gun and shot them both. Joanne was paralyzed. Donna survived. The attacks continued. January 30, 1977. Christine Freund and her boyfriend John Deal were in a car in Queens. The killer shot through the window. Christine was killed. John was unharmed. March 8, 1977. Virginia Voskerikian, a college student, was walking home in Forest Hills. The killer shot her in the face at point-blank range. She died instantly. Police realized they had a serial killer. The same gun, the same method. Young women targeted. The city was terrified. Women changed their appearance. Brunettes dyed their hair blonde because all the victims had dark hair. People stopped going out at night. Nightclubs emptied. The streets felt dangerous. Then the killer sent a letter to Daily News columnist Jimmy Breslin. The letter was signed, Son of Sam. In it, the killer taunted police. He said he would strike again. He called himself a monster. He said he was commanded to kill by a demon. The letter was published. It caused mass hysteria. Everyone in New York was talking about Son of Sam. Who was he? When would he strike next? April 17, 1977. Valentina Suriani and Alexander Esau were in a car in the Bronx. The killer shot them both. Valentina died. Alexander died. Near their bodies, police found another letter. This one explained that Sam was a demon who lived in a dog. The dog belonged to a neighbor named Sam Carr. The demon commanded the killer to murder. The city descended into panic. Police had over 300 officers working the case. Tips flooded in, thousands, but none led anywhere. June 26, 1977. Sal Lupo and Judy Placido were in a car in Queens after leaving a disco. The killer shot into the car. Both survived. July 31, 1977, exactly 1 year after the first attack. Stacy Moskowitz and Robert Violante were in a car near a park in Brooklyn. It was their first date. The killer approached. He shot them both. Stacy died. Robert survived but was blinded. This attack was different. A witness saw a man fleeing. She saw him get a parking ticket on his car. Police checked parking tickets issued that night in that area. One was registered to David Berkowitz, 24 years old, postal worker, lived in Yonkers. On August 10, 1977, Police arrested David Berkowitz. They found the .44 caliber gun in his car. They searched his apartment. It was filthy, covered in graffiti, satanic symbols, messages to demons. Berkowitz confessed immediately. He said he was commanded to kill by a demon that possessed his neighbor's dog. The dog told him to hunt young women, to shoot them. He had no remorse. He seemed proud. The city exhaled. Son of Sam was caught. The terror was over. David Berkowitz pleaded guilty to 6 murders and 7 attempted murders. He was sentenced to 365 years in prison, 6 consecutive 25 to life sentences. He's been denied parole multiple times. He's still in prison today, now 71 years old. Over the years, Berkowitz changed his story. He now says there was no demon. He made it up. He says he was part of a satanic cult, that others were involved in some of the shootings, but police found no evidence of this. Berkowitz is considered the sole killer. The Son of Sam case changed New York City. It was the first time a serial killer terrorized the entire city. It was covered obsessively by media. It created the template for how serial killers are covered in America. Sensational headlines, constant updates, public hysteria, and it led to the Son of Sam law, a law that prevents criminals from profiting from their crimes through book deals or movie rights. 6 people dead, 7 wounded, a city traumatized, all because one man claimed a dog told him to kill. John Lennon, December 8, 1980, one of the most famous musicians in history, former member of the Beatles, living in New York City with his wife Yoko Ono and their son Sean. John Lennon had moved to New York in the early 70s. He loved the city. He lived in the Dakota Apartment Building on the Upper West Side, a famous building, historic, overlooking Central Park. On December 8, 1980, John spent the day at a recording studio. He was working on a new album. That afternoon, he and Yoko left the Dakota to go to the studio. Outside the building, fans were waiting. One of them was David Chapman. Chapman was 25 years old. He had flown to New York from Hawaii specifically to meet John Lennon. He had a copy of Lennon's new album, Double Fantasy. He wanted it signed. When John and Yoko came out, Chapman approached. He was polite, calm. He asked John to sign the album. John signed it. He was friendly. He always was with fans. Chapman thanked him. John and Yoko left for the studio. Chapman waited outside the Dakota for hours. He didn't leave. He stood there, holding the signed album, waiting for John to return. Around 10:50 p.m., John and Yoko returned to the Dakota in a limousine. They got out. They walked toward the entrance. Chapman was in the shadows. As John walked past, Chapman called out, "Mr. Lennon." John turned. Chapman pulled out a Charter Arms .38 caliber revolver. He fired 5 shots. 4 hit John in the back. John stumbled forward. He said, "I'm shot." He made it into the building's entrance area. He collapsed. Blood everywhere. Yoko screamed. The doorman called police. Chapman didn't run. He didn't try to escape. He stood there. He dropped the gun. He pulled out a copy of The Catcher in the Rye and started reading. When police arrived, Chapman was still there, reading. Calm. He said, "I just shot John Lennon." John Lennon was rushed to Roosevelt Hospital, but it was too late. He had lost too much blood. His injuries were too severe. At 11:15 p.m., John Lennon was pronounced dead. He was 40 years old. The news spread instantly. Radio stations interrupted programming. Television networks broke in with special reports. John Lennon, one of the most beloved musicians in the world, had been murdered. In New York City, outside his own home, fans gathered outside the Dakota, thousands of them. They sang Beatles songs, they cried, they held vigils. The same happened around the world. In Liverpool, his hometown, in London, in Tokyo, everywhere, the world mourned. David Chapman was arrested at the scene. He was charged with second-degree murder. During interrogation, he explained why he did it. He said he was angry at John Lennon for being a hypocrite. John had sung about having no possessions in the song Imagine, but John was rich. He lived in a fancy apartment. He had wealth. Chapman felt John was a phony. He also said he wanted to be famous. He knew killing John Lennon would make him famous. He wanted to steal John's fame. Chapman pleaded guilty. He was sentenced to 20 years to life in prison. He's been denied parole 12 times, most recently in 2022. He's still in prison. He'll be eligible for parole again in 2024. Yoko Ono has opposed his release every time. She says he remains a threat. John's murder devastated his family, Yoko, his sons Julian and Sean, his former bandmates Paul McCartney, George Harrison, Ringo Starr. The Beatles had already broken up, but now any chance of reunion was gone forever. John Lennon's death shocked the world. A musical genius, an activist for peace, shot down outside his home by a man who wanted to be famous. The Dakota Building became a pilgrimage site. Fans leave flowers, light candles, sing songs. Across the street in Central Park, there's a memorial called Strawberry Fields. It's a quiet garden with a mosaic that says, "Imagine." People visit every day to remember John, to mourn what was lost. December 8, 1980, the day the music died. Again, Kitty Genovese, March 13, 1964. A case that changed how we understand human behavior, that created a term still used today, the bystander effect. Kitty Genovese was 28 years old. She worked as a bar manager in Queens. She lived in Kew Gardens, a quiet neighborhood. On March 13, 1964, Kitty finished her shift and drove home. It was around 3 a.m. She parked her car in a lot near her apartment building. She got out and started walking to her door. It was dark, quiet. Nobody was around. Suddenly a man appeared, Winston Moseley, 29 years old. He had been driving around looking for a victim. He saw Kitty. He followed her. As Kitty walked toward her building, Moseley ran up behind her. He stabbed her in the back, twice. Kitty screamed. She yelled, "Oh my God, he stabbed me. Please help me." Her screams were loud. It was the middle of the night, a quiet neighborhood. Her voice carried. Apartment windows lit up. People looked out. Someone yelled, "Leave that girl alone." Moseley ran away. He got in his car and drove off. Kitty was bleeding. She was hurt badly, but she was alive. She tried to get to her apartment. She made it to the back of the building, to a stairwell. She was moving slowly, losing blood. 10 minutes later, Moseley came back. He had changed his hat. He walked through the neighborhood looking for Kitty. He found her in the stairwell. He stabbed her again, multiple times. Then he sexually assaulted her. Then he stabbed her again. Kitty Genovese died in that stairwell. She had been stabbed a total of 14 times. It took over half an hour from the first attack to her death. During that time, she screamed for help, multiple times. The next day, police interviewed residents of the apartment buildings nearby. 38 people said they heard screams. They heard Kitty calling for help, but only one person called police, and that call came after Kitty was already dead. The story was reported by the New York Times. The headline was, "38 who saw a murder didn't call the police." The article described how dozens of witnesses watched a woman being murdered over 30 minutes and did nothing. America was shocked, outraged. How could 38 people watch a woman being stabbed to death and not call for help? What kind of city was New York? What kind of people live there? The story became famous. It was used in psychology classes, sociology classes. It created the term bystander effect, the idea that the more people who witness an emergency, the less likely anyone is to help, because everyone assumes someone else will do it. But there's a problem. The story wasn't entirely accurate. Later investigations found that the number 38 was exaggerated. Most witnesses didn't actually see the attack. They only heard screams. Many thought it was a domestic dispute or a drunk argument. In the 60s, people didn't call police for those things. Some did call friends or family for advice. Some did shout out their windows. The few who saw the attack clearly may have thought Moseley had run away after the first stabbing. The neighborhood was confusing. Multiple buildings, alleyways. It was dark. People couldn't see clearly what was happening. But none of this changes the core truth. Kitty Genovese was murdered. She called for help, and nobody saved her. Winston Moseley was arrested 6 days later for a different crime. He was caught burglarizing a house. During interrogation, he confessed to killing Kitty Genovese. He also confessed to 2 other murders and multiple rapes. Moseley was a serial killer. Kitty wasn't his only victim. He was sentenced to death, but New York abolished the death penalty. His sentence was changed to life in prison. He died in prison in 2016 at age 81. Kitty Genovese's murder changed America. It led to the creation of the 911 emergency system. Before Kitty's death, there was no single number to call for emergencies. Different cities had different numbers. People didn't know who to call. After Kitty's death, cities realized they needed a simple universal emergency number. 911 was created. Kitty's case also changed how we study human behavior in emergencies. Psychologists began researching why people don't help, what stops them, how to encourage intervention. The bystander effect is now taught in every psychology program in America. Kitty Genovese was 28 years old when she died. She was a bar manager. She was described as kind and friendly. She had a partner, Marianne Zelenko, who was waiting for her at home that night. Kitty never made it home. She was murdered steps from her apartment door, while dozens of people heard her scream, and nobody came. March 13, 1964, the night that changed how we understand helping behavior. The night New York City failed Kitty Genovese. Tupac Shakur, September 13, 1996. Wait, Tupac died in Las Vegas, not New York. But his connection to New York is crucial, because many believe his murder was tied to an attack that happened in New York 1 year earlier. November 30th, 1994. Quad Recording Studios, Times Square, Manhattan. Tupac Shakur arrived at the studio late at night. He was there to work on a song with another rapper, Little Sean. Tupac entered the lobby. Suddenly 3 men appeared. They had guns. They told Tupac to give them his jewelry. Tupac resisted. The men shot him 5 times, twice in the head, once in the hand, twice in the groin. They took his jewelry and ran. Tupac collapsed. He was bleeding badly, head wounds, groin wounds. He was conscious but in shock. Somehow Tupac got up. He staggered to the elevator. He went upstairs to the studio. Inside the studio were several people, including Sean Diddy Combs and Christopher Wallace, also known as Biggie Smalls. When Tupac saw them, he became suspicious. Why weren't they downstairs helping him? Did they know about the attack? Were they involved? Tupac was rushed to the hospital. He survived, but he was traumatized and paranoid. He believed the shooting was a setup. He believed Biggie and Diddy knew about it, maybe even ordered it. He had no proof, but he was convinced. This is where the East Coast-West Coast rivalry exploded. Tupac had been friendly with Biggie. They were friends. But after the Quad Studios shooting, Tupac turned on him. He accused Biggie of being involved. He accused Diddy of setting him up. Biggie denied it. He said he had nothing to do with it. But Tupac didn't believe him. Tupac left New York. He moved to Los Angeles. He signed with Death Row Records. He started making diss tracks, songs attacking Biggie, Diddy, and everyone associated with East Coast hip-hop. The most famous was Hit 'Em Up. In it, Tupac claimed he had an affair with Biggie's wife, Faith Evans. He called Biggie and Diddy cowards. He said West Coast was superior. The rivalry became violent. Shootings, beatings. Artists on both sides were targeted. The media covered it obsessively. East Coast versus West Coast. Bad Boy Records versus Death Row Records. Biggie versus Tupac. On September 7, 1996, Tupac was in Las Vegas. He attended a Mike Tyson boxing match. Afterwards, he and Death Row CEO Suge Knight were driving down the Las Vegas Strip. A white Cadillac pulled up next to them. Someone inside opened fire. Tupac was shot 4 times. He died 6 days later, on September 13, his mother's birthday. 6 months later, on March 9, 1997, Biggie Smalls was in Los Angeles for a party. He was sitting in an SUV at a red light. A car pulled up next to him. Someone inside shot him 4 times. Biggie died. He was 24 years old. Both murders remain officially unsolved, but most people believe they're connected, that Tupac's murder was retaliation for something, and Biggie's murder was retaliation for Tupac's. The Quad Studios shooting in New York started it all. 3 men robbed and shot Tupac in a Manhattan recording studio lobby. Tupac blamed Biggie. The rivalry escalated, and within 2 years, both Tupac and Biggie were dead, 2 of the greatest rappers in history, killed at 25 and 24 years old. The East Coast-West Coast rivalry ended after Biggie's death. The violence stopped, but the damage was done. Hip-hop lost 2 legends, and both murders remain unsolved. In 2023, Dwayne Keefe D. Davis was arrested for Tupac's murder. He had bragged about being involved for years. He's currently awaiting trial, but Biggie's murder is still unsolved. No arrests, no charges, no justice. The Quad Studios shooting in New York set off a chain of events that led to 2 deaths. Tupac blamed the wrong people, and paranoia, ego, and violence destroyed 2 lives and changed hip-hop forever. Central Park Jogger, April 19, 1989. One of the most controversial cases in New York City history. A case about race, media, justice, and wrongful conviction. On the night of April 19, 1989, a woman went jogging in Central Park. She was 28 years old. an investment banker. She entered the park around 9 p.m. She jogged north along the East Drive. She was alone. It was dark. Around 10 p.m., she was attacked, beaten, raped, and left for dead in a ravine off the jogging path. She wasn't found until 1:30 a.m. A man walking through the park saw her body. She was barely alive, hypothermic. She had lost 75% of her blood. Her skull was fractured. Her eye socket was crushed. She was in a coma. Police arrived. They saw the brutality. The woman, later known as the Central Park jogger to protect her identity, was rushed to the hospital. Doctors didn't think she would survive. That same night, there had been a group of teenagers in Central Park, around 30 kids. They were causing trouble, harassing people, throwing rocks, attacking cyclists. Police called it wilding. The kids were between 14 and 16 years old, mostly black and Hispanic. From Harlem, police rounded up several of them. During questioning, 5 teenagers confessed to attacking the jogger: Antron McCrae, Kevin Richardson, Yusuf Salam, Raymond Santana, and Corey Wise. They were 14, 15, 14, and 16 years old. Their confessions were recorded on video. They described the attack in detail: who did what, how they beat her, how they raped her. The confession seemed clear. The case seemed solved. The 5 teenagers were arrested and charged with attempted murder, rape, assault, and robbery. The case exploded in the media. The victim was a white woman, a successful investment banker. The accused were young black and Hispanic boys. The racial dynamics were explosive. The tabloids called the boys animals, monsters. They called for the death penalty, even though they were minors. Donald Trump, a New York real estate developer at the time, took out full-page ads in 4 newspapers. The ads called for the return of the death penalty in New York. They said the attackers should be executed. The city was divided. The trial began in 1990. The prosecution's case relied heavily on the confessions. There was no DNA evidence linking any of the 5 boys to the rape. No physical evidence, no witnesses, just the confessions. The defense argued the confessions were coerced. The boys had been interrogated for hours, without parents present, without lawyers. They were scared, exhausted. They told police what they wanted to hear, but the jury didn't believe it. All 5 were convicted. Antron McCrae, Kevin Richardson, Yusuf Salam, and Raymond Santana were sentenced as juveniles. They served 6 to 7 years. Corey Wise was tried as an adult because he was 16. He was sentenced to 5 to 15 years. He served 13 years. In prison, the 5 boys maintained their innocence. They said they were in Central Park that night, but they didn't attack the jogger. They were coerced into confessing. Nobody believed them. Then, in 2001, a man named Matias Reyes came forward. Reyes was in prison for murder and rape. He said he attacked the Central Park jogger, alone. He described details that were never made public. He knew things only the real attacker would know. Police tested his DNA. It matched DNA found on the jogger, DNA that had never been matched to any of the Central Park 5. Reyes acted alone. The 5 teenagers were innocent. In 2002, the convictions were vacated. The 5 men were exonerated. They had spent years in prison for a crime they didn't commit. They sued New York City. In 2014, the city settled for $41 million. The Central Park 5 case is now considered one of the worst miscarriages of justice in American history. 5 innocent teenagers were convicted based on coerced confessions. The media demonized them. The public wanted blood. The justice system failed them. The case raised questions about race, media bias, police interrogation tactics, and wrongful convictions. In 2019, Netflix released a series called When They See Us. It told the story of the Central Park 5. It was watched by millions. It reignited public interest in the case. The 5 men, now known as the Exonerated 5, have become advocates for criminal justice reform. They speak about their experience. They fight against wrongful convictions. They work to change interrogation laws. The Central Park jogger survived. She was in a coma for 12 days. She had no memory of the attack. She recovered physically but suffered brain damage. She eventually revealed her identity. Her name is Trisha Mealy. She wrote a book about her recovery. She became a motivational speaker. She has said she believes Matias Reyes attacked her. She supports the exoneration of the 5 men. April 19, 1989. A woman was brutally attacked in Central Park. 5 innocent teenagers were blamed. They spent years in prison. The real attacker walked free for over a decade. It's a case that shows how justice can fail, how media can destroy lives, how race and fear can lead to wrongful convictions. The Central Park Five were innocent, but they lost years of their lives, and New York City had to reckon with what it did to them. These 5 cases show different faces of New York City crime. Son of Sam, a serial killer who terrorized the city for a year. 6 people murdered, 7 wounded, a city living in fear. David Berkowitz claimed a demon in a dog commanded him to kill. He's still in prison, will never be released. John Lennon, a music legend, shot down outside his home by a man who wanted to be famous. David Chapman is still in prison, has been denied parole 12 times. The world lost a genius because one man wanted attention. GENOVESE, murdered while neighbors listened. The case that created the bystander effect, that led to the creation of 911. Winston Moseley was a serial killer. He died in prison. But Kitty's case changed how we understand helping behavior. Tupac SHAKUR, shot in a Manhattan recording studio. He blamed the wrong people. The East Coast-West Coast rivalry escalated. Tupac and Biggie both died. Both murders tied to that night in New York. The Quad Studios shooting started a war that killed 2 legends. Central Park Five, 5 innocent teenagers convicted of a brutal attack they didn't commit. They spent years in prison. The real attacker confessed years later. The 5 were exonerated, but their lives were destroyed. By police, by media, by a city that wanted someone to blame. These cases shaped New York City. They changed laws. They changed culture. They exposed flaws in the justice system. Son of Sam led to laws preventing criminals from profiting from their crimes. John Lennon's murder highlighted the dangers of obsessive fandom and mental illness. GENOVESE created 911 and changed our understanding of bystander behavior. Tupac's shooting fueled a rivalry that killed 2 of hip-hop's greatest artists. The Central Park Five exposed racial bias, coerced confessions, and wrongful convictions. New York City is a city of millions. Most people live their entire lives without encountering violence. But these cases remind us that crime can happen anywhere, to anyone. A serial killer hunting in quiet neighborhoods. A music icon shot outside his luxury apartment. A woman murdered while neighbors listened. A rapper shot in a recording studio lobby. Teenagers wrongfully convicted because of their race. These cases also show the power of media. Son of Sam was covered obsessively. Daily headlines. The killer even wrote letters to newspapers. John Lennon's death was global news, broadcast everywhere instantly. GENOVESE's story was misreported but became famous anyway. Tupac and Biggie's rivalry was fueled by media coverage. Magazines, TV shows, everyone covered it. The Central Park Five were demonized by tabloids before they even had a trial. Media shapes how we see crime, how we react to it, who we blame. These 5 cases changed New York City forever. They're part of the city's history, part of its identity. Son of Sam Summer, the night John Lennon died, the murder GENOVESE, the East Coast-West Coast War, the Central Park Five. Every New Yorker knows these cases. They're taught in schools, discussed in documentaries, remembered in memorials. They're warnings, reminders, lessons about justice, media, violence, and human nature. If this video showed you the dark side of New York City, make sure to like and subscribe. We cover verified true crime cases from around the world with respect for victims and their families. Comment which NYC case shocked you most. Share this with anyone interested in true crime. These stories need to be told. The victims need to be remembered, because New York City is more than just bright lights and skyscrapers. It's also a place where real people lived and died and fought for justice. Remember their names, remember their stories, and never forget that even in the city that never sleeps, darkness can strike at any moment.